Hey, this is Anney.
And Samantha.
And welcome to Stuff I Never Told You, production of iHeartRadio.
And this week, we wanted to talk about the activists in Colombia. But before we start, we wanted to touch on the dangers that the activists are facing today and have been facing. So we're going to go ahead and let you know this is not a happy episode. Like, we are celebrating a woman who is doing some amazing works and continue to fight. But we also have to acknowledge the violence that they are suffering as well and the danger they are in for doing this work. Just so you know, we're not going to go into specific incidents, but there is mention of violence and rape and harassment. And it's not unusual, unfortunately, for those in Colombia and many other countries to suffer this just for being activists. And that's the big conversation that we're going to have, that activism can be dangerous, and we've seen it, and we know that that puts a target on people's backs. And when you have a country that its government cannot or does not supply the help that people need, especially in rural areas, then it becomes even more dangerous. And that's kind of what's happening with Colombia, and that's what's been happening. I do know that politics has been a little rough, and there's a new president coming in, and hopefully they will be able to make some changes and provide more support and help. But yeah, that's a long, big story. But like I said, we wanted to get into the history of it a little bit. We're not going too deep, but just so that you are aware of what is happening. And as we were doing research for the amazing people who continue to fight for the rights and preservation of their community, so many reports are coming about the violence and threats that are happening against the activists around the world. And Colombia has suffered many losses recently. The numbers are pretty staggering, and I think it's changed. When we first heard some numbers, I believe in 2016, 2017, there is a watch group on the ground giving us higher numbers, and I can't not believe that. Obviously, we wouldn't want to discredit that in any way, because they know they are seeing things that often are not mentioned and or hidden. As we know, according to one report in 2020, at least 220 activists have been murdered, according to that same report. And it's from the Intipaz, and I'm so sorry if I said that wrong, which is a local watch group that we just mentioned. At least 1,328 leaders have been killed since 2016. And in 2021 alone, they recorded at least 171 deaths.
And there's a few reasons. Many experts are saying it is due to the increase in violence, including struggle for power, absence of any type of state authority or assistance, the support to recover stolen land, and other factors like that. Marginalized communities such as the indigenous and Afro-Colombian communities have been a large part of the resistance and leadership for the activism within Colombia, and therefore they are highly targeted. As in fact, many of the activists, including the one that we're about to talk about, have been under constant threat and harassment, to the point that petitions and international groups have called for the overall protection of these activists.
Right. And just so you know, there have been many stories coming left and right about getting texts and getting visits and being told that they will be harmed or their family would be harmed. And as one indigenous activist said, that this is not about them becoming activists, but they were born activists, because it is them trying to take back their land or take back what was theirs to begin with, which has been stolen. And I think that's a big part of the conversation that we have to have in these activists and conversations that are having, because overall it's for everyone, but it's something they have to do because it is their livelihoods. Unfortunately, that's exactly what is happening for our activists today. Jackeline Romero Epiayu, I hope I did that justice, who is one of the leaders of the Fuerza Mujeres Wahyu, an organization of indigenous Wahyu women in Colombia. They are one of the largest indigenous groups in Colombia, and the group was established to define the rights of the community and to defend them for that as well. Romero and the Wahyu are from the Colombian region of La Guajira, and this area has been a place of controversy, as many of the residents have been displaced or terrorized by those who are trying to take control of the resources of the land. So it's pretty rich in its resources. because crops are being taken over and all of that. And many have been displaced by the mining company of Cerrejón, which not only uses violent methods of getting what they want, but also have caused major health and environmental crisis throughout the region. Many of the locals stated they were suffering from respiratory and skin problems. There's contamination of water, air, and soil, and there's even been death due to this type of contamination. So it's pretty severe, but of course, nobody's really been protecting the community as they are being polluted and displaced. And Romero has been a vocal challenger against those who've been destroying the land and the community. Romero has been leading the group, which started in 2006, and their aim has been to defend the rights of their community, their people, and their culture from the violations occurring due to these corporations and even the drug trafficking issues, because a lot of the crops have been taken out for cocaine plants. From what I understand, people are scared to try to change that.
Right. And though she has been recognized for her work and has made an impact, including uniting the communities against the mining company and even stopping the company from diverting a large portion of the region's river to facilitate coal extraction, it's come at a price. Since her activism, she has been receiving threats both verbally and physically. She has had to travel with 2 bodyguards at all times, and many different organizations have been advocating for the government to put more protections, not only for the safety of these activists, but also for protecting the land and the communities. When talking about these types of issues that many of the women activists have to face, Romero stated, "Their lives are constantly threatened. We see cases in the country where many people are murdered for saying things that someone doesn't like, companies don't like, the governments don't like, politicians don't like. As women, we are more vulnerable because we face different situations than men. The fear of being raped, for instance, the fear of having your children murdered. The impact that this has on women being victims of some kind of threat will always be different. And I also think that intentions will always be different by the perpetrator." But even with that constant threat, she remains positive. She continued saying, quote, "If people have the need to threaten, it is because we are doing something right. The message is to look for more allies, to raise our voices, because that is the way to protect the life of the organization, its members, in such difficult times."
Yeah, and she has been awarded with the National Human Rights Defense Award in 2017. And she had a message for the many women, Indigenous and non-Indigenous activists, saying, "Doing what we are doing is worth it. Supporting others, being the voice of those who many times can't have a voice is worth it. Certainly, we will not transform the world, but we will make a contribution that will surely transform somebody's world, the world of a community, and that gives us hope." Which I thought was really, really powerful. If you are interested in finding out more about Romero and her work, you can look up her name. We will also send you this information, because there are petitions and there are calls to action to help women like her, the Indigenous community that she is with, to protect them during this big fight. Because again, it's been a long haul, and many have died and many continue to die violently due to their stance in trying to protect their loved ones.
Yeah. And as always, if there are any listeners in Colombia, and you have any information or resources or other people we should shout out, please let us know. That information is invaluable to us. You can email us at stephanie@momstuff@iheartmedia.com. You can find us on Twitter at momstuffpodcast or on Instagram at Steph One Never Told You. Thanks as always to our super producer, Christina.
Who was invaluable to us.
Oh,
for sure.
Absolutely. And thanks to you for listening. Steph One Never Told You is a production of iHeartRadio. For more podcasts from iHeartRadio, you can check out the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your favorite shows.